Hey guys, welcome back to Small Trees. Today I'm going to go in depth, so take a minute and get a snack and a drink before you dive in. I think this is the most talking I've ever done in a video to date, and by the end I got a little bit hoarse. Let me know if you guys like the information overload or if you prefer me to, talk a little bit less. The topic of bonsai soil is one that's hotly debated, and there is no one right answer. Many people swear by their own mix, and if what you're using works for you, then you should keep using it. With that being said, I want to go over the most common components of bonsai soil. I want to explain what they are, what their properties are, and why they're used. I'll also try to include any alternatives that may be easier to find depending on where you live. In a later video, I'm going to go through the physics of soil and explain what we're trying to accomplish by using these soil components. A lot of this information comes from Dr. Scott Allen Barboza, and I'll include links to his work in the description. My goal here today is to try to break this down and make it as basic as possible to give you an understanding of what role each soil component plays, so that you may feel comfortable making your own soil mix if you want to. To start, bonsai soil is made up of both organic and inorganic components. Organic matter has two main roles to play in the pot. The first is nutrient supply. Organic matter releases nutrients as it breaks down, which feeds the tree. Supplemental fertilization is always a good idea, but organic matter is a source of food. Some bonsai artists don't include any organic matter in their soil components, but the second use of organic matter is my main reason for including at least some in my pots. That second function is water retention. Inorganic components like Akadama store and release water, but organic matter does so more effectively. In a nutshell, more organic matter in your soil will mean an increase in the time that your tree has water available to it. In a hot climate like mine, this serves as a little insurance so that if my watering system malfunctions or some other unforeseen complication happens, I'll have a little bit more protection. Too much organic matter can cause decreased oxygen available to the roots, and it can result in root rot. But I'll try to cover that in depth when I discuss soil physics in another video. The most common organic soil component is shredded pine bark or pine bark fines. They break down fairly slowly, and so they do not really reduce drainage in the pot, not as quickly as something like leaf matter would. Don't use leaf matter in your soil, this is just an example. Inorganic material will compose the majority of most soil mixes. When we say inorganic, we mean that these components were never alive. Think clay, lava rock, etc. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm sure this is going to spark a lot of disagreement and people telling me what I missed or how I'm wrong in the comments, but there's an abundance of materials that fall into this category. I'm going to go through them one by one and give you a little overview, as well as any alternatives that I'm aware of. Let's start off with the most widely used soil component, Akadama. This could be your soil by itself if you have good horticultural knowledge and know how to monitor your tree's food and water needs correctly. The term Akadama is Japanese and it translates into red ball, denoting the color and shape of the soil component. Actual Akadama is mined in Japan from volcanic soil. It has several desirable characteristics that make it a staple in bonsai soil everywhere. As I mentioned earlier, Akadama will absorb water and release it over time. It doesn't hold as much water as organic matter, but in many situations, this is preferable. It also will break down slowly over time, although this seems to be accelerated by freeze-thaw cycles in colder climates. There are a few different brands of Akadama, with some being low-fired and some being high-fired. The high-fired brands like Yaki, Akadama, and Akadama Tokoname, they have harder granules, and so they'll break down more slowly, which is generally what you want. A good substitute for Akadama is calcined clay. It doesn't have all of the desirable characteristics that Akadama has, but it's often more easily accessible and it's cheaper. My personal favorite is Turfus. It's made for use on sports fields, mainly around the infield of baseball fields. That's actually where I source mine. I'll go to the local baseball field and just buy a few bags from them. It is a manufactured product and it results in a fairly uniform particle size, and it doesn't really break down. It is not round like Akadama, rather it's pretty angular. However, Turfus and most other calcined clays only come in a small particle size, and that may not be very useful if your other soil components are larger, typically if you're potting a larger tree in a larger pot. What I would consider a third line replacement for Akadama is another soil additive called decomposed granite. If you live in a rural area like I do, you may be able to go into a feed store and ask for chicken grit or turkey grit. Chicken grit is a smaller particle size and turkey grit is larger. In agriculture, chickens and turkeys will ingest this grit to aid in grinding down food in the gizzard. They also make oyster shell grit, but I would avoid that. It's very high in calcium and it's going to increase your soil pH. So in most cases, I would avoid it. I've thrown it into grow beds before, but I've never actually put that into a pot. Another worthy mention is diatomaceous earth, or DE for short. DE is composed of the fossilized remains of marine phytoplankton. It has a few different uses. They include pest control. It has very abrasive edges that will slice through the exoskeleton of ants or whatever it may be and cause the pest to dry out. It will absorb oils and fats from them, which will eventually desiccate them and kill them. This oil absorption property also makes it useful in auto shops for cleaning up oil spills. One thing to note about DE though, there is a misconception that you can use kitty litter as a soil component. 99% of kitty litter is regular clay that will basically turn into a rock in your pot. The reason that is a misconception is because there are a couple of kitty litters that are made of DE, but in my opinion it's best to avoid kitty litter altogether, as you can't get any DE kitty litter in the United States. If you live abroad, Tesco may carry a litter made of DE. The best source for me of DE is local auto parts stores. Napa sells an oil dry product that's suitable for use, but the particle size is very small. You also need to sift it. It's got a lot of dust. I have some, but when I brought it home and looked at it, I decided to only use it in my growing beds because the particle size was so small that I did not think it would be practical. You may be able to find larger particle sizes in hydroponic stores. Another staple in many common soils is either pumice or scoria, which is lava rock. They're also, like Akadama, formed from volcanic activity, and they're very lightweight and very porous, lava rock being heavier than pumice. They're formed when volcanic eruptions send lava into the air. It solidifies as it flies, and it forms either scoria if it's thrown through the air, or pumice if it sticks to the side of the volcanic vent. Scoria is high in iron, and as such it will usually either be a dark gray or a red color. And interestingly enough, the ones that you buy at the stores usually are red, and that is actually just because the iron inside the lava rock has rusted. Pumice, on the other hand, is usually a very light white to light gray color. It typically has enough air trapped inside that it will actually float. In Japan, white pumice is sold as hyuga. Neither of these will break down in the pot. They serve to increase aeration in the soil. Having rough edges, they can also encourage the growth of fine roots. A decent substitute for pumice is a manufactured product called haydite. The process of making haydite involves rapidly heating clay, shale, or slate to temperatures over 2200 degrees Fahrenheit or 1200 Celsius. The end product is a very lightweight, very hard aggregate. In my experience, it's been really easy to source pumice, so I've not used haydite in any of my soil mixes. If for some reason you can't find pumice, one of the easiest substitutes would be perlite. You can find it in most stores that have a garden section, and it is very cheap. It's the white, rocky additive that you see in most bagged potting soils. I would use perlite in a pinch, but in my opinion, the density of perlite is so low, you can crush it with your fingers pretty easily. I feel like it may degrade over time and impede drainage in your pot. Now, quickly onto soil mixes. First off, it's advisable to always sieve your soil components before you mix them. You want to get a uniform particle size. This is because a mixture of large and small particle sizes will over time compact, and it will greatly reduce drainage in the pot. And as we know, reduced drainage means standing water, means dead roots, means unhappy tree. A few popular mixes are available online, although you can make them yourself and probably save some money. If you have more than a few trees to repot, it's probably worth trying to find a local bonsai club and see if they're having a group buy on pallets of Akadama, scoria, etc. You can save a lot of money this way. A tried and true soil mix is Akadama, pumice, and lava rock in a 1:1:1 ratio. You may see this referred to online by the acronym APL. Boone's Mix is a very popular variation on APL. It is APL with small amounts of decomposed granite and horticultural charcoal added in. The charcoal serves as organic matter, providing nutrients and also absorbing and releasing water. Your soil needs will obviously vary with your climate, but with my trees and my climate, I usually use Boone's Mix with a dash of pine bark fines added. This is because I've had several water system failures recently. Like every year, I have a different setup and nothing's really worked great just yet. But the extra bit of water retention that the bark adds gives my trees a little more protection until I can fix the system or water them by hand. I tried to make this as simple and quick as I could. Hopefully this information will help you a little bit. I'm going to expand on the goals of soil mixes and how to reach those goals in a video soon. Let me know down below what you think. Until next time.